Welcome to Cohn and Krueger. That's Larry Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn. He's at his house. I'm in Levi Stadium. The Niners just had their local pro day. Bunch of local college graduated players that I haven't heard of, but Kyle Shanahan was here. John Lynch was here. Javon Kinlaw was here. Brandon Ayuk was here. Brandon Ayuk and Kyle Shanahan had a long conversation on the field. I have no idea what they were talking about, but I'd like to think that it was premeditated on Kyle Shanahan's part to send a message to Debo. I don't know. Larry, let's talk about Debo. If they were to trade this guy, is the deadline is the deadline the draft? Is that sort of when it has to happen, and that's in 2 weeks?
Yes. In short, yes, Grant, because you can't move off of your best offensive player and not get better. And if you do that trade after the draft, what's that trade for? That trade's for 2023 draft picks. So now you're going to have to wait a full year as Debo lines up and plays for somebody else. You're going to have to play this year without him with no draft picks. So no, it has to be on draft day. And I would say it almost has to be with the New York Jets, because I think the Jets are the team that wanted Tyreek Hill. Joe Douglas is in year 3 of his tenure there. And it's go time for Joe Douglas, or he's out at the end of the year. And he's got 4 picks in the top 38. And if I'm Lynch, if I'm going to trade Debo, I got to have those picks.
So that makes this very intriguing. Like, why is Deebo Samuel doing things now? Why are the 49ers responding now? Because this could be coming to a head in the next 2 to 3 weeks. This is sort of the deadline. The 49ers wouldn't, as you said, they wouldn't trade him for picks next year. They could hold on to him and trade him for a player, but what player are you going to trade him for who's as good as Debo? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So it seems like while the Niners don't finish negotiations this early, they're going to have to work something out in the next couple of weeks to know that they can move forward in good faith with Debo.
Grant, I think they already know where they stand with Debo, because the reality is that at this point, there's $70 million guaranteed to a couple wide receivers, and he wants to be in that category. And, you can go study the history of the Niners and their bonuses. It's something I know you've talked about on your channel this week. They don't have a history of giving $72 million. They don't have a history of giving $60 million. They don't have a history of giving $50 million. No. So odds are they're a great distance apart with Debo. And it sounds severe to say, oh, maybe they'll trade him. But I think it's not just viable. I think at this point, I don't want to say it's likely, but I would say it's at least 50-50 whether they move him.
Sure. And I guess the question here is it smarter to give Deebo Samuel the going rate, $70 million, which is $22 million more than the Niners have ever given guaranteed, or is it smarter to trade him? What do you think?
I think it's smarter to trade him.
Wow.
And I know that's like, wow. Are you kidding me? They just went through this.
I'm open-minded.
With DeForest Buckner and Javon Kinlaw. And I understand. I mean, you've made the point that their Super Bowl window is directly tied to Deebo Samuel. So I know how what a ridiculous statement it is to say it's better to trade him or smarter to trade him.
I'm saying it's ridiculous. It's not.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
No, I know. But I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are going to hear this and immediately are going to be like, dude, what? Come on. No, it didn't work with Buckner and Kinlaw. And no, you can't go down this road. Stop trading your great players. But there are very few players in the NFL that are worth, multiple top tier picks. And if you're the 49ers, are you going to give $70 million to Debo? And then if you give him that kind of money guaranteed, are you going to stop using him as a running back? Probably not, because he's better with the ball in his hands.
Right.
So it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. He now, because of the way you utilized him at running back, he wants to be paid. And I don't blame him for wanting to be paid, but I wouldn't want to be the team that pays him that much. And I don't think they do either. And I think they're too far apart to compromise. And I think the Jets, on the other hand, are sitting there needing that player, and they've got the ammo to get it done. And if I'm the 49ers, they got 4 picks in the top 38. I need 3 of those 4 picks to make a deal.
Fair enough. Let me go back. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on this one. Okay. I think it's smarter to pay Debo. And I think the way you can do it, I understand you're worried about longevity, the way he plays. First of all, if they extend him, I don't think he's going to play running back that much more. Even though he's good at it, how can you justify that? And I think what you could say is he was forced into that role because Mostert went down and Jimmy's awful, or Jimmy's limited. If Trey Lance is as good as advertised and the Niners draft a running back, which they maybe there's not as much of a need to play Debo at that position. Also, what they could do, because he still plays a physical style of football and he's gotten hurt running, like Kittle. He's gotten hurt just straight up running, but it's groins and hamstrings. they could give him guaranteed in 2 years. Give it all front loaded while Trey Lance is on his rookie deal, and really don't commit yourself to Deebo Samuel long term. But look at him as someone who could be special for 2 more years. Is that a compromise, or what do you think?
It's a philosophical discussion from within. You cannot pay a guy $70 million as a wide receiver and then use him on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1.
That's true. You can't do
that. Means you need a big back. Now we'll talk about Brian Robinson from Alabama, and it was a big back. It was a 220, 230 pound back. And maybe that's your compromise, that you pay Debo, but you use him as receiver, and then you draft another back, and you basically say to Debo, we're going to use you running, but outside the tackle box, not through the A gaps and short yardage and on the goal line.
That seems like a fair compromise too. And like, we'll give you a carry when we're on the 25-yard line, when we're at the 17, because you could probably score. But other than that, maybe we'll limit you to end arounds and screens like we did in the past. Okay, but you think that they're really far apart and it's looking like they might not work it out. Let's say they don't. We don't know. What do you think he's worth? Given that the Jets were rumored to be offering 2 seconds for Tyreek.
Well, and think about what the difference is between Tyreek and Debo. Tyreek's got issues off the field. Debo does not. Tyreek was already being paid from a team that was strapped against the cap because of the Mahomes contract. The 49ers theoretically are in the driver's seat here. They've got Debo under contract for what, $4.5 million this year? They don't have to extend him this year. They could let him sit. So I would say, if I'm John Lynch and Joe Douglas comes calling, I say, Joe, the pressure's on you to win in New York or not have a gig. The pressure's not on me. I got an asset that I love, and I got him at an acceptable price. I don't have to do anything before draft day. You do. So I would say, it's all about trying to stick it to Joe Douglas, and I wouldn't make this deal unless I could. So what does that mean? That means I don't think you can get 4 and 10, but I want 4, and then I want both those 2s. And then I can trade from 4 down the draft a little bit and regain some of that, and maybe even another pick. But I want that 4th pick, and I want those 2 2s, and maybe an additional pick. And then that to me is a really high price tag for Debo. But you're also getting a player that Robert Saleh knows and likes. You're also getting a receiver who's ready to step in today, unlike every receiver in this draft that isn't ready to step in today, and you need to start making it happen. They're 6-27 since Douglas took over. They were 4-13 last year. The Jets have the longest playoff drought in the entire NFL. So the pressure's on them, and because of it, I'd try to stick it to them and rip them off.
Yeah, if the Niners do trade Debo, they better get that number 4 pick back. And I think the way they can sell it to the Jets is, look, we know what you wanted to give for Tyreek Hill. Debo's better. Tyreek's more proven, but he's 28 and his game is built on speed. Debo's in his prime. Debo was more effective last year. Debo's going to cost you more, and you're more desperate now because you've swung and missed, struck out multiple times in free agency. So we're gonna need that number 4 pick. Last contingency. What if? Is it possible that Debo could say, all right, you don't think I'm worth $70 million? I'm not signing for anything less. And I'm willing to play out my rookie contract to prove it and get that, because next year it could be $80 million if he does it again. Do you think he would do that, or is that just insane in football?
Yeah, that's a great question. How
confident are you, Debo? You know what I mean?
Yeah, my other question is, if you're unhappy and we're miles apart, what do you do? I saw Ayuk working out with Trey. I saw 4 or 5 receivers. I didn't see Debo. So I got issues about questions, I should say, whether or not Debo comes to camp in shape. If he doesn't take care of his legs, if you give me Debo coming off an offseason where he didn't take care of his legs, I don't even want him at the price tag that I want him at today.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
That was 2 years ago. That's what happened. And last year he had a phenomenal offseason. What's he doing now? Don't know.
Yeah. That's a huge piece of information as far as, do I want to extend him? But I don't think Parag is going to get anywhere near the $70 million. So then it's a matter of, do you want an unhappy asset? Do you want a guy who's not going to be training his legs in the offseason?
Yeah.
I mean, then you could get stuck paying him a lot of money and getting very little. So this is a very tricky thing, because you got to make sure that you're either getting value for him in a trade, because the fans are going to absolutely riot if you trade the best player on the team. But they'll be with you if you get a killer trade, including that fourth pick.
Pretty much. So 49er fans, this could happen in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think it absolutely won't. Larry thinks it's 50-50. I'm right there with him. I kind of hope the Niners do it just so I can witness chaos. I love chaos. It's my favorite.
I love chaos.
Big fan of you both. I am in trade him camp if money's too much. I think a lot of 49ers fans are. I think it's interesting what Debo did. I think backfired a little bit. The social media stuff, it polarized him with the fan base. Instead of having everyone saying, pay Debo, you got 50-50, as opposed to everyone saying, pay Nick Bosa, who hasn't opened his mouth, or change his social media status.
Well, and I think we got to give the fans a little credit as well. There's some pretty intelligent football fans, and they can see that it's not smart to pay a guy as a wide receiver top of the scale and then use him like a hammerhead fullback. And that's what the Niners, if they used him the way they have utilized him, that's the road they're going down. So I think there are a lot of people looking at that going, wow, could you steal a bunch of draft picks from the Jets? The Jets are desperate. And then, still though, the draft, as we saw with Kinlaw, no matter how highly rated these prospects are, there's no guarantee that what if they get the fourth pick and use it on Garrett Wilson? Okay, is Garrett Wilson for Debo a good trade? Probably not.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we're talking about replacing Debo with the running back, so he doesn't have to do that anymore. And you brought up an interesting point. I mean, we've all talked about how you got to replace Debo's explosiveness, Raheem Mostert's explosiveness. They did also use Debo as a short yardage running back. Who is the short yardage running back? Well, the 49ers are bringing in Alabama running back Brian Robinson for a visit. He ran a 4.3, but he is a punishing running back. I was just watching highlights of it. He runs really freaking hard compared to Chris Carson. What do you think this visit indicates about where the Niners are looking in the draft?
I think that they know that either they can't use Debo in short yardage, or that they need a bigger, more physical back to combine with Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they have confidence that it's going to be Trey Sermon, he's bigger, but he's got some pick and slide. He's slow to hit the hole. He's not a great short yardage back. Brian Robinson is 230. And as you said, runs in the 4.3s. And if you watch him, he's an incredible athlete. And people would know his name better if he didn't sit behind Najee last year and on the can full of backs they had the year before. This is a premier guy who just has low tread on the, low mileage because of the way he was utilized at Bama. So I think there's a couple backs. Dameon Pierce from Florida is a guy, phenomenal leg strength, great short yardage back. Robinson's 230. It's a great draft for backs. You might be able to get a really good back. And Grant, you may be able to get that guy in the third or fourth round.
Right. And I think what's interesting is when fans fill out their mock drafts, especially for the 49ers, they think running back's a need, but they could get that guy in sixth round after the draft. This may indicate that they're looking at the top running backs in the draft. Because if you think about it, if they're trying to take Deebo Samuel out of that role, that's almost the most important role in the offense. The Raheem Mostert role seems replaceable, but it's hard. It hasn't been. And when the Niners don't have it, they're not that great on offense. When they do have it, they're tough to beat. So if they feel like they can get one of the top 5 running backs in the draft, even though they drafted Trey Sermon in round 3 last year, I think they'll do it. They might take a running back in round 2.
I think the mock drafts that I've done, Kenneth Walker III from Michigan State, who started at Wake Forest, is there. Yeah. And he's a star back. He might be the best back in the country.
Yeah.
And he's really proven. He's done it. He's done it in 2 different schools, 2 different conferences. He's a star back, and I like Elijah Mitchell, but I like him as part of a committee. I like Sermon, but I like him as part of a committee.
Yeah.
I think you can, I asked you last week, what's the bigger need, wide receiver or running back? It might, even though they the problem is they can't keep using Debo as a running back.
It's running back.
It's problematic if they keep him. And it's obviously become a problematic situation on the contract, but it's a great draft for backs. And they could be staring, the way the NFL draft is shaken out, the way in the mocks, they could be staring at maybe the best back in the draft or one of the top 2 or 3 guys when they pick at 61. And that might be the direction to go.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, like, you don't want to draft running backs high. it's pretty much a truism. But were the Colts stupid for drafting Jonathan Taylor in round 2? No.
Exactly.
Were the Browns stupid for drafting Nick Chubb in round 2? Were the Titans stupid for drafting Derrick Henry? And no. And even if you only get, say, 3 years of elite production from this running back, and then he eventually breaks down, that's a pretty good return for a second round pick. I mean, you could do worse. You could get Aaron Banks and get nothing. So I wouldn't rule it out. And if they do take a running back at 61, I wouldn't pan the pick at all. Besides Brian Robinson, because I don't know if he's the 61st pick in the draft. What about the number 1 running back, at least on NFL.com, Breece Hall? What do you think of him? He's had a lot of carries in college.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I mean, he's a really skilled running back. I like Walker the third from Michigan State a little bit more.
Okay.
But I like Breece Hall too. I think Breece Hall's a little safer, so I think he might be mid-second round pick. I think the old saying was, running backs are devalued. Don't draft a running back on day 1 or day 2. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of morphed into you can draft a running back on day 1 or day 2. Just don't be in a rush to give that running back a second contract.
There you go.
You know, be ready to move off of that running back for a different back instead of giving him a big money second contract. I think that's where you get in trouble.
I still don't really understand why the Niners drafted Trey Sermon. I mean, I liked him at Ohio State, but he's not particularly explosive to the edge. He's not super physical. I know he was really good in the zone read with Justin Fields, but that's not really the Niners offense. I mean, I don't know. Is there something salvageable there?
I think so. I think so. I think, I thought he looked good in the Seattle game. Go back to that Seattle game where he played pretty well. He's a slasher. Yeah, he's a slasher. He's a pick and slide guy who, I don't want to say Le'Veon Bell because Le'Veon Bell was full on dance at the line of scrimmage guy. Yeah. This guy is a little bit more patient, a little bit more pick and slide, but he's a rhythm back, and he's a back that needs carries to establish a rhythm. I mean, he had a 330-yard rushing day at Ohio State. He was good both with Oklahoma. Who was it again?
I want to say it was against Northwestern.
It might have been Northwestern, which is they've had some pretty good, Patty Fisher. They had some pretty good linebackers.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm just saying he's a guy that needs rhythm, and thus far they haven't shown the patience to let him run that way. I think that he's a nice complement to what they have, but they didn't. Bobby Turner wants running backs that hit the hole now and are decisive, and this guy as a rookie didn't show that decisiveness. True. It improved, but he still wasn't there. But I would say don't judge Trey Sermon until you see him in the preseason this summer.
Right, because he didn't have a ton of experience running outside zone. What I do remember is in 2019, when the Niners were starting Tevin Coleman, and he was really struggling, and then all of a sudden they figured out that Mostert was better, we would talk to Kyle Juszczyk in the locker room and say, what is it about Mostert, without bringing up Coleman, what is it about Mostert that makes him so good? How is he so good at this? And Juszczyk would say, he's the most decisive running back I've ever seen. Like, he doesn't hesitate at all. It's not just that he has good vision. It's that he sees it and decides to go. And it's, I guess, in comparison, Tevin Coleman was indecisive. I guess it doesn't matter about him, but decisiveness for a running back. Good call. It's important.
And the other thing with Sermon is, I think that 49ers, what they saw when they drafted him, Grant, was they're going to have a lead. It's going to be the fourth quarter. Teams are going to be loading up to stop the run. You need a bigger back who can pick and slide, find those crevices, and just kind of grind out a first down or two. And I think ultimately that will be his role. He'll be the guy that puts the game away in the fourth quarter.
See, when I knew things were getting weird between the Niners and Debo was last year in Jacksonville. They were up 20, 30 points in the third quarter. The Niners needed to ice the game with their running back. They were handing off to Debo. Up multiple scores. I was like, there's a problem here. You can't. This is not sustainable. I understand using Debo here and there, but you're afraid to let him return kickoffs, and you have him grinding out the clock up 25. And I can't do that. So maybe Brian Robinson is exactly the kind of running back they're looking for. Maybe they take two running backs like last year. I don't know. What is Elijah Mitchell? Is he a between the tackles pounder like Tevin Coleman? Is he explosive to the edge? Because I didn't see the big explosive runs from Elijah. Is he a third down back?
He's a guy who ran 4.3 but doesn't play to that speed.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't play to that speed.
No.
You never saw that speed on the field. I think, you know what I actually think he is, Grant? I think he's an awesome short yardage back.
Yeah.
Because he you don't get a clean look at him. He doesn't square the shoulders and give you he doesn't run upright. He runs with great body lean. He falls forward. So he's a good crafty back that finishes his runs and is good in short
He
yardage.
does. He's like a better version of Jeff Wilson Jr. It seems like the Niners have two similar running backs who are at their best between the tackles, don't have a ton of bursts to the edge. That's why Debo had to play. That's why Moser was so valuable. I don't know about Brian Robinson. I don't know what kind of bursts he has to the edge because really the best blocker on the team is Kittle. And if you can get out there quickly, there's just free yardage out there for you. If you can, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Robinson's a power back with a lot of speed, and he's just typical Bama guy, big, strong, fast. I like him. I like him a lot. I really do. I think he's good, and he's underrated, and he's got low mileage. So it's like almost like a car. With running backs, you got to look for low mileage. You got to look for have they been in an accident or two. This guy's been pretty much injury free, and he's got low mileage, and he's a premier athlete. So I like him, and I think you could probably get him. Definitely day 2, maybe late day 2, maybe even early day 3. So, and as far as Elijah Mitchell, the guy that he reminds me of a little bit is Marcus Allen in that he's got that a great ability to kind of get small through the hole. And neither guy is big and physical like a short yardage back, but both of them you can hand it to on the goal line or in short yardage, and they'll find the crevice.
Marcus was a little bit before my time, but couldn't he jump over the pile?
He could go over the top, but he also great change of direction. But Marcus's great thing was he just for a lean, narrow base back, he always could find that extra yard or two inside, and he was great on 3rd and 1, great on 4th and 1.
Correct me if I'm wrong, too. He ran a 4.7 at the USC Pro Day, and the thing with him was that his conditioning was phenomenal. He would never, ever, ever slow down throughout the course of a game. This was all before my time, but this is the legends I heard of Marcus Allen.
And great vision vision on on the second level. I mean, he could reverse course. He did it in the Super Bowl against Washington. But I thought Marcus's greatest thing, we saw it in the Joe Steve game in '93 when they needed to have he was a guy when you needed a key catch to extend the drive, he would make the catch. When you needed 3 yards, man, he would wiggle up in there and get the 3 yards. So just very effective, really good guy as far as being able to gauge down and distance and know what he needed.
Ninth Wonder Comics says 25 million, not too much for Debo. Debo is a threat on 3 levels of the game. How many players can do that? Free front office wasting time and energy, a no-brainer decision. 3 levels of the game. Is that catching passes, running the ball, and special teams? He also threw a touchdown pass. That's 4 levels.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it's not that it's not that he, he's limited. He's not limited. It's just that he's great as a runner with the ball in his hands, and he takes hits. And and then go back to South Carolina. He had soft tissue injuries. He had a broken fibula. He's had injuries with the 49ers. He's only played like 31 of 48 possible NFL games. I mean, in the NFL, how do you lose? You lose when you pay guys who aren't on the field. And that's how you lose games. So if you pay him a lot of money and he's suddenly got a quad or a hammy, which is totally envisionable, you're in a world of hurt if you pay him big dollars.
What's interesting about this is eventually the 49ers are going to have to change how they do business. They may not change it for Debo, but the going rate for elite wide receivers and elite quarterbacks in terms of guaranteed money is exploding. Like quarterbacks are getting fully guaranteed contracts now. You thought 48 was a lot, Parag? Try 230 for Deshaun Watson. And look, I mean, if you don't want Debo at 70 million, it could be Ayuk at 70 million, 80 million next year if he has an elite season. It's the way it is. So at a certain point, you're going to have to open your mind and embrace the present because you're living in the past. And I understand if you feel that Debo isn't the one that deserves to break all your precedents, but you better be right because you're the same team that ran off Terrell Owens. I'm just saying.
And you don't have the we're poor excuse.
No.
You have a stadium that mints you money, and the fans all see it. They're paying that freight. So you got to spend that money eventually.
Right. So if you're saying that 70 million guaranteed is a problem, you're saying like on principle. Like, not pragmatic. You could definitely afford. That's nothing. That's chump change to the $4.5 billion Yorks. It's the principle of the thing. There's principalities involved.
No question. I mean, let's be honest. They paid off probably close to $70 million on bad coaching decisions in the last decade.
Right. Do what you got to do. Merkin says Debo drops a lot of passes. Don't forget. And now he's got to catch Lance's passes. And he's not working out with Lance. But Ayuk is.
It's a huge factor. Huge factor.
Because Lance throws, he knows he throws hard. And he's going to subconsciously throw to people he trusts. Kaepernick did. So it could be Debo. Should be Debo. Trade him for the pick, says Thomas. Trade back for more and use that cap space on more defense. He's on your side.
Well, I mean, it's a 53-man roster. Yep. And you could have Debo, Debo could show up, get the money, and be fantastic, and you could lose because you don't have a corner, a nickel corner, a backup linebacker, an edge rusher opposite Bosa, a right side of your offensive line. I mean, it's a team game, so you gotta make good decisions.
Or he could get paid, not work out very hard, and come in out of shape. I mean, he wouldn't be the first. And I guess the Niners have to wonder, are you a football guy or a money guy? And right now, a lot of people are wondering that question with him.
I think he's a football guy, but I think it's crazy to think. I mean, the only thing that scouts look at for potential injuries is past injuries indicate potential for future injuries. Yes. This is a player who's had past injuries. So yes. I don't want to pay him $70 million. I'd rather get 3 picks in the top 38.
Tobin says trade Debo, get a stud wide receiver and running back and more in draft. They could. They'll get multiple picks. C. Turley says Debo has tagged himself out. Trade him for 2 seconds. Man, you trade him for anything. Get Christian Watson and Nick Benito. Any names you'd like the Niners to go after if they do make a trade?
I mean, you name the position, I can give you a name. I like Christian Watson. Definitely. I mean, he's but once again, if you go Debo for Christian Watson and it's like a 1-for-1 or a 1-for-2 kind of a thing, chances are fans are going to be upset. Why? Because Debo is going to go to New York. He's going to have a huge year, and you're going to have Christian Watson, a rookie receiver, as your, who you're hoping to teach the NFL game to. So if I'm going to trade a star player at his pinnacle while there's no pressure on me to do so, I need to win that trade as far as picks. And that means high picks and multiple picks.
Isaac Hartman says if we can trade Debo 4th overall, 2 seconds, take one of the better tackles and trade back up for a wide receiver and or great running back if 49ers love one. What do you think? Offensive tackle at 4?
Offensive tackle at 4? No. I can't go offensive tackle at 4. No. I just you were 1 win away from the Super Bowl and you had freaking Tom Compton at tackle. So let's not forget that.
And also, the Bengals had the worst offensive line in the league or down there. I mean, the Rams certainly didn't have a great offensive line. Maybe offensive line. Maybe you just don't. I think with offensive line, you shouldn't have you can't have a bad one if you're going to win a Super Bowl. But you need to have the best offensive line? Maybe not. To Steven's point, are you guys concerned the Niners haven't addressed offensive line this offseason? Well, I bet you they will in the draft. Bet you they will.
Yeah. I mean, they did address it in last year's draft.
Yes, they did.
So, I mean, that's really the answer to that question. I mean, I'm concerned that they're going to reach for offensive linemen the way they reached for Kinlaw because they struck out with Solly. Are they going to reach for offensive linemen this year because Banks and Jalen Moore can't play? That's a mistake when you start doubling up filling needs because you swing and miss in the draft.
Especially when the Niners are so concerned about trading Jimmy Garoppolo for a 2nd or 3rd round pick. You can't be reaching if you're so concerned about the value of your picks, right?
You got to hit. You got to hit.
Ninth Wonder says you can trade for 100 picks and not get to Debo. That's the scary thing. I mean, I don't know how long Debo's going to last, but for now, man, he's special. That's enough Debo.
And that's why you can't just say, "Oh, I'll take a couple of picks." It's got to be 4 or 5 picks, and it's got to be 3 premier picks of those 5 because you're trading the established star who's not Tyreek Hill. He doesn't have a rap sheet, and he's not Tyreek. You're not in a situation where you're forced to move him. You have latitude on paper, so I think the deal's got to be even better than the Tyreek Hill.
Good point. Yeah, they don't have to move him; they can afford him. This is something that even if Debo's unhappy, the Niners could keep him. This has to be in their interest.
Right. This has to be the Jets are hemorrhaging. The Jets, decided they had to have this player, and they may need this player because Douglas could be out of a gig if they don't win 4 or 5 more games this year, and they're not going to win 4 or 5 more games with the rookie receiver.
Let me ask you this: what if the Packers call? They're desperate. It's the same conference, and they don't have a top 10 pick, but they have 2 in the 20s and a 50, one in the 50s. Is that enough?
No,
no,
it's not.
Sorry,
because now it's too. Now you're preventing yourself from winning a Super Bowl this year potentially because you're giving your arch rival your big time player. I need that price tag. If the Packers have to pay a higher price tag than the Jets.
See, Turley says Niners need to trade Debo and in the 3rd round draft Kellen Diesch.
Yeah, big ASU tackle. The nice thing is they play from a similar scheme, so that's a scheme fit. I'm kind of wondering though if he's kind of like a McGlinchey. Is he a guy that's solely a right tackle with limited movement skills and just going to struggle against speed rushers? And that would be my question too. Is on McGlinchey? We'll get to that in a minute.
If the Niners aren't, let's talk. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Michael Durant says if neither player ever gets injured again, who's more valuable, CMC or Debo? Also, Debo. I'm sorry, I'll take the wide receiver. I like CMC though.
Yeah, I mean McCaffrey's an awesome player, but I mean he's another guy. Runs upright. See, Debo runs with running back body lean. So that to me is the key to injuries. When you run upright, you take hits. When you take hits, you get hurt. Debo runs with a great body lean like a Big Ten halfback.
He reminds me of Roger Craig with those violent high knees. Also, trade Jimmy and Debo to Panthers for CMC and pick 6. I'm a little nervous about CMC. He's been really hurt the last few years. I wonder what he's got left.
And also, I don't know if that works for you because CMC makes so damn much money that how do you then allocate the contracts for either Debo or Bosa? Part of the attraction of moving Jimmy is to get out from underneath the cash. You're kind of defeating the purpose.
No question. On a running back who's been hurt. Charlie says trade Debo to the Jets, 10th, 38th, 5th, 3rd, 23. Niners draft Kyle Hamilton falling for 40-time Watson, Alec Pierce, both 6'3", 4'4" speed. You got Niner fans. I'm telling you, Debo, you got half the Niner fan. You got half the fan base trying to trade you, man. You might want to post one picture on Instagram of you wearing a Niner jersey or something.
And I don't know about Kyle Hamilton, by the way. I love Kyle Hamilton as a player, but another guy who's had injury problems, and he's really linear. And the NFL game's far more physical. Injured play. His injury concerns concern me in the top 5 of the draft.
What's your contract offer for Debo? Me personally, I would give him all his guaranteed money within 2 years. I would want to be able to move on after 2 years. I'm not sold on his longevity. That's what I'm
topping out at $50 million guaranteed. So
I'll go to 60.
Yeah, I would top out at $50 million guaranteed because I want the latitude to be able to use this player the way he's best utilized, which is with the ball in his hands, end arounds, running back, receiver. I want all of it.
Debo to the Jets. Kalba says Debo to the Jets for 35, 38, 69, and Elijah Vera Tucker, who was a first-round pick last year and went to my high school.
Good player. He really good player. Plug and play guard. I mean, I guess the question on the offensive line, Grant, is what do they need on the offensive line? They got left tackle covered. Is left guard covered with Banks? Is Mack coming back? Is center covered? Is right guard covered with Brunskill? And the big question is McGlinchey. So and then how do they? I like Jalen Moore, and I liked Aaron Banks at Notre Dame, but I like Jalen Moore based on what I've seen. I think he's ready to play.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see. Michael Durant says if you trade Jimmy and Debo for CMC and the pick, you save $9 million from the Debo contract. You get rid of Jimmy G's salary, plus you get pick 6.
I guess I would have to know. I'd have to feel like I could turn pick 6 into a bonanza by moving down. If I had some other deals tied to, somebody who wanted to move up to 6, maybe there's somebody who wants Kenny Pickett. Maybe there's somebody who wants Malik Willis. I got to know that I'm not just taking the 6th pick in the draft.
I can't get my head around trading for a player who's played 10 games the last 2 years and making $16 million a year. I can't do that, but that's not mine. C. Turley says, who is more valuable than the Niners, Debo or Nick Bosa? It's got to be Bosa. I know you said we get pass rushers, but wide receiver loaded in this draft. To me, I think it's Debo. I mean, I think with Debo wasn't on this team last year, I think they win 6 games. If a wide receiver is worth 4 wins to your team, think he can name his price. Now, Bosa's great at what he does, but I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. The Niners are the top 5 defense without him.
I mean, Bosa can't do it by himself. Debo in some ways can.
That's
Bosa's,
a great distinction.
You know, I mean, look, they just played Stafford, and they, you know, did they put heat on Stafford in that final drive? If they did, I don't remember. I don't remember seeing it.
That's a great. You can chip Bosa. You can double team Bosa. I mean, if one
defensive
defensive
take Bosa away, you can run away from him. You can double him. You can, you know, Bosa's
part
of a committee.
Neutralize a wide receiver like Debo or Jamar Chase or Cooper Kupp than a defensive end like Khalil Mack or Nick Bosa. I mean, you gotta do is double team the guy, and then it's
you know, Cooper Kupp versus Leonard Floyd. If I ask the same question, or Cooper Kupp, Von Miller. People are going to say Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. See, Turley. Oh, we got you. See, I must prove it. Look at his entire career, not last season before the money. Okay. Okay, that's true. Okay. I'd like to see if Debo will just take this through to the very end of his contract and say, all right, I'm betting on myself. Risky. Jimmy G traded during the draft. Realistic.
I've given up on the Jimmy G trade, ideas. I mean, I would think that, you know, draft day is the ideal time to move Jimmy, but I don't know what the plan is at this point. Can you discern what their plan is with Jimmy?
I think they're going to keep him and get a comp pick for him next year. I think they love comp picks that much that they would keep Jimmy Garoppolo for a year to do. I mean, my dad thinks I'm wrong. We already bet a bottle of wine on it, so he thinks they'll cut him eventually. But I don't think they have the guts to cut him, and I think they love comp picks way more than they should. They look at it as free money. I don't know.
Which makes the late free agent, you know, window interesting because there's no comp picks tied to those guys. So they may spend some money.
Explain that. When is
that? So if you sign a player after, I think it's June 1st.
Okay.
That player is not part of the equation that lends itself to comp picks or no comp picks.
Right, because it's all about you only get comp picks if you have more people leaving than coming in, right?
Right, but also it's when you sign those deals. So if you sign a free agent after a certain point in the offseason, maybe it's the draft, maybe it's June 1st, but I think I could look up that date. But when you sign them after that date, they are no longer part of that equation, good or bad. Whether you're losing somebody or signing somebody, it's out of the equation.
Wait for the Niners to make more moves, although they do have the least amount of cap space in the league, and they're going to have to create about $10 million to sign their draft picks. So things could happen.
Yeah,
things could happen. And trading Debo doesn't really do much. They're going to have to cut Jimmy at some point, or maybe extend Jimmy Ward.
You really think they're going to bring Jimmy back? That was
I think they will. I think it's insane.
Pop said
he thinks it would be insane. He thinks it would be like certifiably insane for them to bring back Jimmy, and they won't do it. But I think they would do it. I think they're a little crazy. It's a little crazy.
Man, to me, that is inviting the circus to town. Oh my God! I mean, imagine how great that would be for us this summer as we're doing practice recaps.
I'm hoping.
You know, how did Jimmy do? How did Trey do? Where Trey was 5 of 7. I just checked the chart.
I said Trey was 5 of 8, though. Who's right?
Yeah, exactly.
Orium says pumping up Debo's value in his and everyone's mind in a contract year is freaking dumb, and knowing you weren't going to win the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, not ideal. Niner fans are pissed. They don't know what's going to happen, but they're upset.
There's a lot of unknowns.
Charles says Texans at 3 could trade for Debo, and they have the cap space. Oh, it's getting the bidding.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Aren't they trying to move Brandon Cooks right now?
Here's the thing, though. Look, I haven't talked to Robert Saleh about this, but it just seems like the reason the Jets are so desperate to trade or sign a veteran wide receiver is because that guy's not in this draft. I mean, it's a deep draft of wide receivers, but there's no Jamar Chase in this draft.
No.
Am I wrong?
No,
you're totally right. They're looking for these kind of guys. So if you think you can trade Debo and replace him with a guy in this draft, you're probably looking more like 2 or 3 guys. I don't know if there's a Debo in this draft.
Well, I mean, look at it this way. If you're Joe Douglas, you could draft Cedric Wilson, but you might be drafting him for another GM. If you trade for Deebo Samuel, you know, you're there. You're going to probably still be there.
Charlie says can't pay 2 players big money deals, 25 and 30 million, can't build team. Lance has a big arm and good with legs and speed and tall receivers. Oh boy. So you're going to choose Bosa over him? Okay, well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. C. Turley says Mike McGlinchey, more like Mike McSkinny. Okay, let's talk about that.
I mean, did you see the picture, Grant, of McGlinchey the other day? Now, I saw that picture, And I feel like I'm at this point, I'm like an expert on Mike McGlinchey's body because I've
Yeah.
watched this guy
You
for a
know,
few
way more than
years.
you'd like to know about Mike
Yeah,
McGlinchey's body, right?
exactly. This guy, but he bulked up last year and he put on a lot of weight. And he was stronger as a run blocker. And I didn't even think he lost that much quickness against speed rushers. I thought he found his ideal playing weight, but he is a country mile. I don't know what that picture was the other day, but he's, I would say, 18 to 25 pounds shy of his playing weight based on that picture. Based, unless it was an optical illusion, he looked like about maybe 280, 295, maybe
At
290.
best. I mean, he looked like freaking Joe Staley right now. He looked like a guy, like an offensive lineman who's about to announce that they're retiring. Not saying he's going to, but you know what I mean? Like you see the picture, it's like, oh wow, Joe Staley looks great. Oh,
Yeah.
Joe Staley's retiring. It's over.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell that. And the weird thing that was weird about it is he posted it himself. It's
I
not
know.
like the paparazzi got him. Like he was like, here I am. Like, really? You didn't think people would be like, yo, Mike, what the fuck? What is going on, Mike? So I don't know. If he is planning on coming back, I don't think he's going to be ready week 1. That doesn't look like a guy who's going to be ready week 1.
No. And I'll say this. I didn't like that pick when they made it because you don't take a right tackle in the top 10.
No.
And they did that. But I was hoping for Roquan Smith. Roquan, I think, went the pick earlier to the Bears. So
if you wanted a tackle, everyone said Colton Miller had left tackle feet. He had upside. He wasn't going to be great his rookie year, but he had potential. The Niners like, no, we need a starting caliber right tackle right now. That's not a good reason to draft one offensive tackle over the other. Look at Colton Miller now. He's a stud.
Yeah. And McGlinchey is conscientious, hard worker, good run blocker for his size, but he's never going to be that blow you off the line power blocker. And he lacks speed to get to the edges to cover speed rushers. So, man, a nice guy, solid player, not worth the 9th pick in the draft.
I got a story. I was talking to a former player last year. I won't say who it was. And I was saying, I was a little harsh to Mike McGlinchey. I really was kind of ridiculing him on social media. I think I'm going to dial it back. Off the record, the guy said he needs it.
He needs it.
He needs it. It's good for him. So I'm not saying who it was, but that's wow.
Some guys do need it. Some guys do need it. It's personality type.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I was on him all of 2020 being like, dude, you're too light. You can't play this position at 285. And he came back and said, I was too light. I need to be bigger. And he was a lot bigger last year. I don't know if he's going to make it back. It seems like he's one of those offensive linemen who has trouble keeping the weight on, not keeping the weight down. You know what I mean?
That's a huge
Brown's
thing.
The other way. Yeah.
To me, the equation between your walk-around weight and your game day weight needs to be no more than 10 pounds. If it's any more than 10 pounds, man, there's injury risks, there's long-term risks. It's just hard to keep putting on. It's hard to walk around at 280 and then put on, enough weight to be 315 and powerful. And you got to do that every year, all the protein shakes, all the lifting. It takes a toll on your body. It's hard to replicate every year.
You have a terrible diet. You eat all the sugar. You eat a ton of calories. He looks like he's like 7% body fat. He looks like lean. He's on Weight Watchers. He looks fantastic.
He looks like a tight end.
He really does. So look, the Niners I never thought Mike McGlinchey was that good. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm wrong. I always thought he was borderline. And Tom Compton, I thought, was real close. So the Niners have won a lot of games with suspect right tackle play. It's just one great left tackle and 4 question marks. I wonder if that is the best way to go about it. But maybe the offensive line just isn't as important anymore if the quarterback's getting the ball out of his hands in 2 seconds or scrambling and running away from the trenches anyway. I don't know.
Well, I think one thing that's clear is it's a year-to-year league. It's a year-to-year for the players, year-to-year for the coaches. So are you going to draft an offensive lineman and invest the 2 years in him? I'd almost rather not draft an offensive lineman, not invest those 2 years and go pick guys off the street who are ready to go right now.
Willie says McGlinchey posted a video working out, jogging, and lifting weights and a picture of his weight at 310.
That's where he needs to be, about 310.
310. I see
He
what
he
was
didn't
like.
wait. That picture from the other day wasn't 310. I'll tell you
No,
that.
no.
He was
I've seen
290
him
at
at
best.
310. That wasn't 310.
Yeah.
All right. So John Lynch is going to talk. He didn't talk today. I was hoping he might. He was here, but he's going to talk. He's going to do his annual pre-draft press conference where he says exactly who the Niners are going to take, right? Like those press conferences are so silly. But no, he has a lot to talk about, not involving the draft. And he's going to have to sit there and answer those questions. He's very diplomatic. He doesn't actually answer questions, but he says, "That's a good question, Larry." And then he gives you a whole filibuster. What questions does he need to answer at this pre-draft press conference, just in terms of the offseason, the team in general?
I mean, I think the big one is, can you pivot from Jimmy and Trey to Trey and Jimmy seamlessly, or is that problematic in any way, shape, or form? Because that's what the idea that you were throwing out, that maybe they would bring Jimmy back, or that means the whole pecking order goes from Jimmy to Trey to Jimmy, and then all of a sudden, is that problematic? Everybody knows the investment in Trey, but they also know that last time you guys suited up with a chance to go to the Super Bowl, you started the other guy. So, do you lose your job in an off season? I mean, where you didn't play any games? I don't know. So to me, that's the big one. Is it viable to bring back, could you have come back behind a first round draft choice safety and been the number 2 safety in the locker room and not lost face? Does Jimmy automatically lose face and lose his leadership mantra with the team if he's now the number 2 guy? How's that play out? Is there you guys have made it sound like it's viable. Is it actually viable? I think that's the question I'd want to hear him answer.
That's a good one. How about, why haven't you named Trey Lance the starting quarterback yet? And how can he lead this team until you do that?
Absolutely.
I mean, they're whispering like he's ready. How can he be the team leader until they say you're the starter? It seems like these wide receivers are like, who should we go hang out with this offseason? Jimmy or Trey? What is Jimmy doing, by the way? What does Jimmy do in the offseason? Does anyone know?
That's a great question.
Anyone know?
I mean, I'll say this: the guy doesn't come to camp out of shape, so obviously he's pretty conscientious about his workouts. But where does he spend it? Is he in the Midwest? Is he in LA? Is he at the facility hiding out?
I don't know. Idea. So, okay, he's going to have to answer questions about the quarterback situation. He's going to have to answer questions about Debo, assuming he's still on the team.
Yeah, I mean, how far apart are you guys? Is there a scenario where Deebo Samuel
is not on
your best offensive player gets traded on draft day? That right there is a doozy, because you know what? He's got to, if they're even considering it on any level, there's no dodging. Is there any way he gets traded on draft day? Because that to me will be revealing. Because if he comes back and says, nope, there's no way he gets traded on draft day, we put that whole angle and whole story to bed. It's goodbye. It's like it didn't even exist.
Jed almost did, right? Jed retweeted that meme of Chris Rock's. I mean, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, and it was like the Deebo Samuel trade rumors. Okay, well, Jed retweeted that. Well, does that still stand? What's going on? Because it seems like Peter King is saying they could trade him, and Matt Mayoko saying don't be surprised anyone's available. What's the deal, John? Can we get so that's 3 things. If you ask about Javon, how about Mike McGlinchey? He needs to answer for Mike McGlinchey. What's the deal with Mike McGlinchey? And if he says, oh man, he's attacking his rehab, I don't want to hear that he's attacking his rehab. Where is he in the rehab? Are you? No, how do you answer it so he can't?
Is he on schedule for week 1?
Week 1, and he'll say, well, we don't know. We don't know, Larry, but we hope so. And he's really, if he can't start week 1, what's the plan? Well, we have a lot of guys we like, and this is draft. We have a lot of draft picks. Yeah. Okay. McGlinchey's another one.
I would say to him, how many picks do you feel like you need? What's the maximum number of draft picks that you feel and your staff feel can make your 53? How many guys and how many picks do you at the end of this draft do you want? How many potential openings are there on this 53 as you're staring at it today on your wall in your office?
How many starters do you need from this draft class?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Last year you guys barely made the playoffs, and there was this whole Brandon Ayuk's not doing things and the optics and all. Who knows what the issue was? Did you learn anything from that? Is that a situation that could repeat itself? Because you guys almost cost yourself the playoffs sending him a message.
You also last year, you repeatedly said you had a championship roster, which is why you were starting all veterans, and that you were having 2019 vibes. I must have heard that phrase 50 times last year. 2019 vibes, championship roster. Haven't heard anything like that this year. Do you still feel you have a championship roster? What are the expectations for this team?
Yeah. How many times do we hear the term run it back?
Run it back. Run it back. Well, you don't hear that anymore.
No.
Well,
how about this? Here's the one.
Here's such an important thing. Why did you focus 95% of your free agency on special teams?
Here's my question. You lost the anchor of your run defense and the guy who shuts off the A-gaps and DJ Jones. You replaced him with Hassan Ridgeway, who's known to have some injuries, and he's really more of an interior rusher who rushes as part of a rotation. Who's now the anchor of your run defense? Is it have to be Javon Kinlaw? And if Kinlaw can't be healthy, and because we haven't seen him consistently healthy, who is the anchor of your run defense on your defensive line now that you don't have DJ Jones?
I love that. That's pretty good. I mean, it shouldn't be like, who are you looking at 61?
No, yeah. Those questions. I mean, that's an exercise in futility. I'll tell you one more. Do you think that Jokowski Tart is a good football player who was framed for, not framed, but he was, a lot of people blamed him for the loss because of the dropped INT. You played that position. You see the skill set of Tart. He's out there. Is Tart viable to bring back, or what are you looking for specific? To me, this is a real good question. What kind of safety are you looking for in this draft? We know you're looking for a safety. Are you looking for a free safety who can cover the deep middle and allow Jimmy to play in the box and be your new Tart? Or are you looking for Tart's replacement and Jimmy is still going to be another year at free safety covering the deep third? That to me is a major question because I think it could go either way.
The most iconic quote ever delivered at a pre-draft press conference that I was covering, 2012, Trent Baalke, the 31st pick. Someone asked him, Trent, do you know who you're going to take? And he said, why, yes, I do. In fact, I've written his name inside an envelope.
Oh, I know it is. I know.
AJ Jenkins.
It was AJ Jenkins. So I'm interviewing him that night, Grant, in the on KMBR in the war room or conference room across from their war room. And he starts telling this long, drawn-out story, how he wrote this name down and all the specialness. You would have thought he was talking about Jerry Rice.
Yes.
He's AJ Jenkins. I wrote it on a piece of paper. All this crap. And so then I turned to Harbaugh, and I asked him the softest of softball questions because Harbaugh is looking like almost like he was confused. So I look over at Jim, and I say, Jim, what do you like about AJ Jenkins? I mean, you can say anything. And he's like, well, we really think that, really solid.
That's a good question for Trent.
He just stammered and said nothing. And I remember leaving that going, either AJ Jenkins is going to be really, really good, and these guys are sharp as hell, or they just drafted a bust, and we all know how it shook out.
It's important not to tell people that you've written the player's name in an envelope because what you're telling is that the guy's going to be available. So you're reaching. He's going to be available. You value him higher than everyone else, and you're not even allowing for the opportunity of someone dropping to you. Yeah, how could you know who you're going to take? You don't know who's going to be available. What if someone really good fell? Doesn't matter. We want AJ Jenkins.
Nice, Trent. Vontae Mack, no matter what. Laugh it up, Trent.
El Jefe says, Grant, we need to talk. I want another interview with a player. I'm working on it. I am working on it. Don't worry. See, Turley
you just had one right before the show. A little back and forth with Ayuk.
Yeah,
your Jimmy Ward was very strong. You maybe get Jimmy back.
I actually just emailed his agent today. So, Dave Butts, let me know. What's up? Maybe I'll have to go directly to Jimmy. Question I'd ask JL is, why didn't you take the Amazon job because you suck at running a team? You'd really ask him that to his face? That's quite rude.
I don't think you can say that Lynch sucks at running a team. That's hyper negative. This
I
guy's
don't
been
think
to
so.
2 NFC championship games, and he tried to work with his head coach. You got to blame Shanahan for Joe Williams. You got to blame Shanahan for Dante Pettis. You got to blame Shanahan for a lot of those skill position swings and misses, and there's more than a couple.
The one area where I would fault John and Kyle is, as good of a team as they've put together, it's a very good team. They're on year 6 and they're still figuring out the quarterback position. That can't happen. And that's a big deal. So while they're very good in a lot of things, they're just not quite good enough. And if Trey Lance is a big bust, everyone's going to look at Kyle and John as like, you guys can't evaluate the quarterback position. Wow. I guess you have a big limitation. So
You passed on Mahomes. You passed on Watson
Brady.
Because you had Brian Hoyer sitting there?
Yep, absolutely. Do you see the New York Giants trading 36 for Jimmy? I thought you were going to say Debo. Hell no. 36 for Jimmy? No.
That one's an interesting one, though, because I don't know where the New York are the Giants set with Daniel Jones. I mean,
no.
I will say this: there will be trading at the end of the first round. Somebody is going to trade second and third round assets to get in front of Detroit at the end of the first round and take a quarterback. I don't know who it's going to be.
I see. All right. If we keep Jimmy and get a comp pick, Lynch has to go. Someone has to go if they spend $27 million on a third round comp pick. And I think they're going to do that. My dad thinks no one's that crazy. Do you think they could be that crazy to hold on to him just for a comp pick? It sounds crazy.
I don't think that's possible. I don't.
Good. I like it. Are we reaching a point soon where we talk about replacing John Lynch? I don't think so. But again, we'll have to see how things play out with Debo and Jimmy and where the teams goes.
I don't, it's funny. I think the fans are open-minded. I think it's Jed and Parag and Dr. John that would think about, moving on from Lynch for a Peters or somebody else if they don't show some progress. I'm not even 100% convinced that Lynch would have been back this next year if the Niners had fallen short of the playoffs.
Good point.
Or if somebody had come, if the Giants had said, we want Adam Peters, they may have said, we want Adam Peters to stay.
They might have said, hey, Lynch, hey, John, take that job with Amazon. You might want to take that job with Amazon because you don't have a job here anymore. Possible. All right, last one. What is your most cancelable 49ers take? Now, this was a little meme going around on Twitter like a couple weeks ago, your most cancelable food take. An opinion you have that is so unpopular, you probably wouldn't even utter it. And you'd only do it if someone forced you to, because there's nothing to gain. It's just going to make people mad. But we're doing it because it's an exercise for fun. So people don't cancel either of us. This is our most cancelable 49ers take. You go first.
That Kyle Shanahan is a great play caller and not a great head coach. That Kyle Shanahan is a great play caller and can call great plays and sequence great plays, but cannot develop a young quarterback talent.
I don't disagree with you. And I think I'd even go further. He can be a great play caller. He has stretches where he's as good as anyone. Fourth quarter of a must-win game in the playoffs, he can sort of lose himself a little bit. So I will say he is an elite play designer. Although I'm curious to see what losing Mike McDaniel will do. But for this time being, elite play designer, sometimes an elite play caller, most of the times. Questionable his decisions, especially at the quarterback position, which is a big one. So that's a good one.
And game manager. I think he's a great play caller, but how do we call him a great head coach when in the Super Bowl he got Deebo Samuel 2 touches in the second half, and at halftime he was the most dominant 49er player, and in this last game they went final 13 minutes of the game without Deebo touching the football. So to me, you have a meeting on Thursday before the game saying, this is how many touches I want my star to get. And no touches in the last 13 minutes of the game, 2 touches in the second half against the Chiefs. I mean, being a coach is putting your best foot forward. That's not putting your best foot forward.
I love it. Great answer. Okay. Here's my most cancelable take, and I think it's a pretty cancelable one. I think 99% of Niner fans would disagree with me. I say trade Nick Bosa. I say trade Nick Bosa. I know I said trade George Kittle. That's not going to happen. You could trade Nick Bosa. And the reason I say do it, first of all, we talk about injury history for Deebo Samuel. Nick Bosa's is more severe. I mean, Deebo's pulled muscles, broken bones. Nick Bosa has had season-ending injuries at every level of football, high school, college, NFL. So it applies to him too. And as we said earlier, Deebo Samuel can sort of change the game single-handedly. There's not that many players in the league that can take a screen on 3rd and 20 and gain 83 yards. That's pretty special. Nick Bosa is great, but he can't do it all by himself. And Nick Bosa making $8 million a year, which is what he's been making the last few years, is probably the most. I mean, it's the best asset in the league. But once he's making 27, 28, 29, and you've put all your money on your D-line into him and Eric Armstead, do you really have a top 5 pass rush, or do you just have 2 really highly paid defensive linemen? It seems like what you want is 4 good pass rushers, maybe 8 good pass rushers with the second wave. And with Chris Kasarik, you can get that. But when you start giving all this money to Nick and Eric Armstead, I wonder how good the entire pass rush really will be.
Fair. I will say this, though. Here's my line. I don't trade star quarterbacks. I don't trade future Canton, Ohio, future Hall of Famers. And I do not trade defensive linemen who command a double team.
Fair.
I wouldn't have traded Buckner. I don't think I would trade Bosa. To me, when you have a defensive lineman that commands a double team, you are dictating to the offense.
Yes, you are.
And that's Bosa, commands a double team. Buckner commanded a double team. To me, that's where it all starts. That's where your mismatch, if you have one, starts. So that's the line I would draw. I don't want to trade any defensive lineman that commands a consistent double team, and I think he does.
Well, I think the right answer.
But the injuries are legit.
Yeah,
I mean that's a factor.
It was so interesting to me is that forever, like 100 years, the truism was, I mean, defensive end is the second most important position in football. Now, all of a sudden, the NFL, I think, is maybe having a paradigm shift, and wide receiver is skyrocketing in importance. Partially because Jamar Chase, maybe because of Deebo Samuel, maybe because of Cooper Kupp. But all of a sudden, the top paid wide receiver gets paid more than the top paid defensive end. And I think this is what this comes down to. Do you think that the D end is still the most important position on the field other than quarterback, or is it now the wide receiver?
I think it goes quarterback, elite left tackle, and then I'll put wide receiver over defensive end, because I can go 10, 11 deep on my D line and just have a bunch of guys who just play with their hair on fire and rotate another guy through. So I got 3 downs of Ebukam. Now here comes Jordan Willis. Now here comes Arden Key. Right. And I got so many different guys where that wide receiver is a security blanket for your offense. And also, let's be honest, the throws are shorter than ever before, and the run after the catch is bigger than ever before. So you're asking the wide receiver to not just catch it in a crowd underneath, make somebody miss, and make a big play. That's leaning a lot on an individual's talent. So I think wide receiver has been vaulted.
Yes, and if you think about it, if that's the trend, ball coming out quicker and quicker, quarterbacks just distributing to playmakers, them being asked to take the ball from behind the line of scrimmage and make things happen. Well, that really devalues Nick Bosa. If this was a 7-step drop league, a play action league, Nick Bosa is the most valuable player in it. But as soon as everyone goes to the shotgun and it's just boom, 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 all of a sudden, do you need to be spending $30 million on that edge rusher? It seems to me that D-end, especially if you have Chris Kasarik, D-line is a great spot to go Moneyball, because you can platoon the whole thing. You have your run defenders, you have your pass rushers, you have waves, and you got this great defensive line coach who gets the most out of anyone. I don't know.
Once again, the difference is the double team for me. But yeah, it's all about numbers. It's all about showing up in camp with like 15 different guys that you believe in and maybe utilizing a dozen of them.
Yep. I guess really the best point here is if you're afraid about giving Deebo Samuel's money because of injuries, what about Bosa? That's what I would leave you with. What about Bosa? Are we sure?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, that he had the core injury at Ohio State. He barely played. He, tore up the knee at MetLife against the Jets in week 2 a few years ago. That ended that year. I would also say that in some of the biggest moments, he's I don't want to say AWOL, but he's been out there, but not necessarily dictating the tempo of the game. So it kind of shows that one defensive end, if that's all you got, you can slide your line that way, chip them, and take them away or get rid of the ball. And the other thing is the best quarterbacks in the league, Grant, get rid of the ball quick. They're getting rid of it now. They're not giving your star they're neutralizing your defensive end with their 3-step drop and the ball's coming out. So, it's harder to neutralize a dominant wide receiver in some cases.
I really think that the value of a defensive lineman is going down. I'm with you. I would take an offensive lineman over because the offensive line has to play 100% of the snaps. Defensive line, you could really get creative with platoons. And I mean, it's what Bill Belichick's been doing ever since he traded Chandler Jones, where people were quite surprised when he did that. Anyway, I'm canceled. You're canceled. Last 2 takes. C. Turley says, Grant and Larry, did you give any credence to the Tom Brady unretiring to get to the Niners rumor? Well, I don't know about that, but the whole thing with the Dolphins was fascinating.
That he's going to be a partial owner and then he might,
and then it makes you like go back and be like, well, did Bill Belichick know it? Did he sabotage this? Or was that just like, I don't know, good luck on his part?
I wanted to see Brady. I wanted to see Brady unretire and come here because to me, one more year of development for Trey, I don't want to say is needed, but I think it wouldn't hurt.
Definitely wouldn't hurt. Charlie says trade Deebo to Jets, 10th pick, swapped 2nd, 3rd, 2nd, 23. Niners are a good 5. Are good 5 of the best players at their position, paying $25 million for an injury player.
I want more than just 1 10th pick overall and then pick swaps. I want, I want more than that. I mean, if you're trading Deebo Samuel, Deebo's a good guy and a leader. Tyreek Hill's had problems off the field and was way expensive, and the Chiefs are up against the cap. The Niners don't have to make this move. This trade has to work for them on the back end. They're going to get grilled by their fans. Grilled. You tracked a lot of the hardcore fans. The hardcore fan sees the big picture and goes, yeah, you know what? 4 and 10 and maybe a second or, maybe the 10th or the 4th and like couple seconds, maybe a future pick. They see the nuances of it. The general fan who's not as informed is going to be like, what? You traded Deebo Samuel? He's in the prime of his career. He was the best player you got. Sure. Fire Lynch. They're going to be screaming it loudly. So John Lynch needs to win any trade that he sends Deebo Samuel away.
Before we head out, I said I would trade Bosa. What do you think he would get you in a trade? The Niners.
I think he would definitely get you multiple number ones. I think 2 firsts are probably a good start. Maybe 2 firsts and a 5th, 2 firsts and a 3rd, something like that. I think 3
number 4
picks.
You might be able to get the number 3 pick from the Texans. I mean, he's better than any edge rusher. He's better than Aiden Hutchinson. Is he better than Thibodeau? Probably better than Thibodeau.
Yeah, so I think so. He's more complete. He's more complete than Thibodeau.
So anyway, something to think about.
He's more athletic than Aiden Hutchinson. Yeah.
Team Ayuk. Yeah. Hey, no, I'm just kidding. He's not here anymore. He was here earlier. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Every week, Wednesday, 3 o'clock, Cohn and Krueger. If you haven't subscribed to Larry Krueger's account, his YouTube channel yet, do so.
The Krueger Show. Check it out.
He's grinding harder than anyone else on YouTube right now. He's adding guests every week. It's very exciting. Make sure you subscribe. Larry, thank you for your time.
Have a good one.
You too. Thanks, everyone.